Hi guys, and welcome on Cheaters and Jerks. This channel is about real-life cheating stories and consequences.
They forced me into a chair, tying my wrists so tight the ropes bit into my skin. Panic clawed at my chest as I looked up at Samantha. She was watching with an eerie calm, almost pleased. "Not just once," she purred, gesturing to the men who stood behind her. Their presence felt like a tightening noose. 10 times, with them 10 of them. The bite to her words pierced right into me, and I loved every minute of it. But finally, it was them who lost everything. But let's start from beginning. I sat on the couch, trying to process Samantha's sudden suggestion. The TV droned on in the background, but my mind was racing. Her behavior lately had been off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something felt wrong. "The lodge in the woods?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "That's quite a drive. Are you sure?" Samantha's smile never wavered, but there was an intensity in her eyes that made me uneasy. "Of course I'm sure. It'll be good for us, don't you think? Get away from everything, just the three of us." I glanced at David, who was practically bouncing with excitement. His eyes were wide and hopeful, a stark contrast to the tension I'd seen in him lately. It broke my heart to see how much this meant to him. "Please, Dad," he pleaded again. "We haven't gone anywhere in forever." I felt torn. On one hand, the idea of being trapped in a remote location with Samantha in her current state made me nervous. On the other, seeing David so excited. It had been a while since I'd seen him like this. "Well," I started, choosing my words carefully, "I suppose we could use a change of scenery. When were you thinking, Sam?" "This weekend," she replied quickly, almost too quickly. "I've already checked, and the lodge has an opening. We just need to say yes." I raised an eyebrow. "You've already looked into it?" She shrugged, but there was something rehearsed about the casualness of the gesture. "I had a feeling you'd both be up for it, so what do you say?" David looked at me expectantly, and I felt the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Something about this whole situation felt off, but I couldn't quite place why. Was I being paranoid, or was my gut trying to tell me something? "All right," I found myself saying, against my better judgment. "Let's do it. A family trip could be good for us." The words left a strange taste in my mouth, but the way David's face lit up almost made it worth it. Almost. As Samantha started rattling off details about the trip, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. But for now, all I could do was hope that this weekend would bring us closer together, not tear us further apart. The next morning, the family packed into the car and set off. The road wound through dense forests, the tall trees casting long shadows over the narrow, twisting path. I kept my eyes on the road, but couldn't help stealing glances at Samantha. She seemed almost giddy, an energy buzzing just beneath the surface. "Why the sudden trip?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but my unease was growing. Samantha turned, her smile wide, but her gaze distant. "We need some time away," she replied lightly. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as the car continued down the increasingly lonely road. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. The silence in the car was suffocating, broken only by David's occasional excited chatter from the back seat. "You okay, buddy?" I called back, grateful for the distraction. "Yeah, Dad. Are we going to see bears?" I chuckled, despite my nerves. "I hope not, kiddo. We'll stick to safer wildlife." Samantha's phone buzzed, and she quickly snatched it up. I caught a glimpse of her screen, a message from someone named Alex. She angled the phone away from me and typed out a rapid response. "Work stuff?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Mm-hmm," she murmured, not looking up. The pit in my stomach grew. Samantha hadn't worked in months. Who the hell was Alex? We drove on, the trees pressing closer, the road getting rougher. I'd never felt so isolated. Samantha's leg bounced restlessly, and she kept checking her phone. "How much further?" I asked, my voice sounding strained even to my own ears. "Not far now," Samantha said, her tone unnervingly cheerful. "Just follow the GPS." I glanced at the navigation screen. We were truly in the middle of nowhere now. The dot representing our car blinked alone in a sea of green. "Sam, are you sure about this place?" I ventured. It seems pretty remote. She turned to me, her blue eyes flashing with an emotion I couldn't quite place. That's the point, Jason, to get away from it all. The way she said it sent a chill down my spine. What exactly were we getting away from? And why did I have the sinking feeling that this trip was about to change everything? As I stepped out of the car, the lodge loomed before us, a massive structure that seemed to swallow up the surrounding forest. David's excitement was palpable as he bounded up to the entrance. "This place is huge!" he exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder. I couldn't shake the unease that had been building since we left home. Something about this whole situation felt off, and the sight of the lodge only intensified that feeling. The weathered wood and dark windows gave it an ominous air. "This place feels weird," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Samantha's smile only grew wider at my comment. "It's perfect," she insisted, grabbing David's hand and leading him inside. I hesitated for a moment, my instincts screaming at me to turn around and drive away, but I couldn't leave David, so I reluctantly followed them into the lodge. The interior was just as unsettling as the outside. A musty smell hung in the air, and the floorboards creaked under our feet. The living room was spacious but sparsely furnished, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. "Let's check out the bedrooms," Samantha said, her voice filled with an enthusiasm that felt forced to me. As we made our way up the stairs, I noticed her checking her phone again. She quickly tucked it away when she saw me looking, but not before I caught a glimpse of several unread messages. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Of course," she replied, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Why wouldn't it be?" David ran ahead, opening doors and peering into rooms. "This one's mine," he called out, claiming the largest bedroom for himself. I followed him in, grateful for the distraction. "Wow, buddy, you scored the best room in the house," I said, ruffling his hair. As David explored his new domain, I glanced back at Samantha. She was standing in the hallway, her phone out again, typing furiously. The pit in my stomach grew deeper. "Sam," I started, but she cut me off. "I'm going to check out the kitchen," she said abruptly, turning on her heel and heading back downstairs. I stood there for a moment, torn between following her and staying with David. Something was definitely wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what exactly. The whole situation felt like a powder keg, just waiting for a spark. I stood there, frozen, as the front door creaked open behind us. My stomach dropped as 10 men filed in, their faces grim and unreadable. The air in the room suddenly felt thick, suffocating. "What's going on?" I started to ask, but the words died in my throat as I caught sight of Samantha's face. There was something different about her, a glint in her eye I'd never seen before. She turned to David, her voice sickeningly sweet. "David, why don't you check out the games room down the hall and put on your favorite headphones?" David hesitated, his eyes darting between us. I wanted to tell him to stay, to not leave my side, but before I could speak, he nodded and disappeared down the hallway. I whirled back to Samantha, my heart pounding. "Samantha, what the hell is happening?" Before I could process what was happening, rough hands grabbed me from behind. I struggled, twisting against their grip, but it was useless. "What the? Let go of me!" They forced me into a chair, tying my wrists so tight the ropes bit into my skin. Panic clawed at my chest as I looked up at Samantha. She was watching with an eerie calm, almost pleased. "Samantha, stop this!" I yelled, fear and confusion making my voice crack. She stepped closer, kneeling until we were eye to eye. Her face was inches from mine, but I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. "Jason," she said softly, her voice carrying a chill that made my blood run cold. "There's something you need to see." I struggled against the ropes, my mind racing. "What are you talking about? Untie me right now." Samantha stood up slowly, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She walked over to one of the men, whispering something in his ear. He nodded and left the room. "You know, Jason," she said, pacing in front of me, "I've been planning this for a long time. You have no idea how hard it's been, pretending everything was fine." I stared at her, disbelief warring with a growing sense of dread. "Pretending? Samantha, what?" She cut me off with a sharp laugh. Oh, come on. You can't tell me you didn't notice how unhappy I've been, how suffocated I felt in our perfect little life. The man returned, carrying a laptop. He set it up on a table in front of me, angling the screen so I could see it clearly. Samantha's fingers hovered over the keyboard. You always wanted honesty in our relationship, didn't you, Jason? Well, here it is. She pressed play, and my world shattered. Video after video played, showing Samantha with different men. In hotel rooms, in our house, even in my office. The dates on the videos went back months, years even. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This couldn't be real. Stop, I choked out. Please, just stop. Samantha paused the video, leaning in close. What's wrong, Jason? I thought you wanted to know the truth. Why? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Why are you doing this? She straightened up, her eyes cold. Because I was bored, Jason. Because you were too weak, too passive. I needed more. I needed excitement, passion, things you could never give me. I felt like I was drowning, struggling to make sense of what was happening. But, David, what about our son? For a moment, something flickered in Samantha's eyes. Doubt, regret, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. David will be fine, she said dismissively. He'll understand when he's older. Anger surged through me, cutting through the shock and confusion. Understand? Are you insane? You've traumatized our child. Samantha's face hardened. Don't you dare judge me. You have no idea what I've been through, how long I've felt trapped in this marriage. I shook my head, struggling to keep my voice steady. If you were unhappy, we could have talked about it. We could have gone to counseling or gotten a divorce. But this is cruel, Samantha. It's sick. She laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Oh, please, like you would have ever agreed to a divorce. You're too afraid of change, too comfortable in your routine. This was the only way to make you see. See what? I demanded. That you're capable of betraying me in the worst possible way? That you care more about your own selfish desires than our family? Samantha's eyes flashed dangerously. Careful, Jason. You're in no position to be making accusations. I glanced around at the men surrounding us, their faces impassive. And who are they? Your lovers? Some of them, Samantha shrugged. Others are friends who understand my situation. They're here to make sure everything goes according to plan. A chill ran down my spine. What plan? Samantha, what are you going to do? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Don't worry, Jason. You'll find out soon enough. What are you talking about? My voice caught in my throat, half choked by the confusion swirling in my head. Samantha leaned in, so close I could smell the faint hint of perfume, sweet yet nauseating now. The smile painted across her lips wasn't the one I'd fallen in love with years ago. It was sharp, cruel, serrated at the edges. I've been with these 10 men, she said, almost gleefully, her eyes gleaming with a wicked satisfaction. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I couldn't find my footing, my mind grappling to process her words, to make sense of this surreal nightmare. You cheated? The word barely scraped out of my throat. It was so much worse than I had feared. Samantha nodded, slow, deliberate. She was taking her time, savoring every ounce of horror that crushed into me with each revelation. Not just once, she purred, gesturing to the men who stood behind her. Their presence felt like a tightening noose. 10 times, with them. The bite to her words pierced right into me, and I loved every minute of it. My world spun on a dangerous axis. How could she? How could the woman I married, the mother of our son, boast about something like this? Why? I barely managed, the word a whisper, weak before the storm of emotions crashing inside me. Why are you doing this? Her expression darkened, hardened like stone. Because, she spat down at me, venom lacing her voice. I want you to see what you made me crave. I recoiled, horrified by the glint in her eyes. That wasn't the woman I knew. Or maybe I never really knew her at all. It didn't make any sense. I didn't understand, couldn't understand, why she was doing this, turning pleasure into punishment. But before I could say another word, she snapped her head toward the group of men. Like a twisted maestro conducting a sixth symphony, she gave them one simple command. Show him. They didn't hesitate. They moved in, surrounding her like predators, circling prey, motion calculated, intent clear. My stomach clenched, sickening with a deep, visceral dread as I watched, helpless. "No, Samantha!" I heard myself shout, but the words sounded distant in my own ears, swallowed by the suffocating tension in the air. I was powerless, restraint pulling at my arms, holding me back from doing anything, from stopping what was about to happen. "Please don't do this." But she didn't even look at me. No one did. They started, each movement slow, pointed, meant for me to see, to lock my eyes on this nightmare unfolding right before me. I could hardly breathe, air ragged and sharp in my throat as they touched her, hands moving over her body like she was some sort of prize rather than a person. Her expression remained defiant, eyes never wavering as they locked onto mine with a mix of something twisted, something that chilled me down to my core. In that look, there was no remorse, no second thoughts. There was only cold, calculated satisfaction. "This is what I wanted, Jason," she murmured, voice low, thick with something dark, something that cut through my helplessness with a serrated edge. Her words stabbed into me, each one digging deeper, carving away at everything I thought our marriage was built on. "This is what you made me crave." The room shrank. My vision tunneled, now focused purely on the horrifying spectacle in front of me, my mind unable to process the sheer enormity of her betrayal, the depravity of her actions. They kept going, kept touching her, their hands rough, possessive, treating her like she didn't matter except for the fun they got from her. And she let them. She welcomed it. "Samantha." "No." My voice broke, a cracked whisper lost in the cascade of my collapsing world. I stared in disbelief as David's small figure appeared in the doorway. My heart shattered into a million pieces. This couldn't be happening. Not to him, not to my boy. "Mom, Dad." His voice was so small, so scared. I wanted to shield him, to protect him from this nightmare, but I was powerless, bound and helpless. "David, no!" I screamed, my voice breaking. I thrashed against my restraints, desperate to reach him, to cover his eyes, to make this all go away. But I couldn't move. I couldn't protect him. Samantha's head snapped towards David, her expression faltering for a split second before she quickly composed herself. "David, go back to your room," she shouted, her voice high and strained. But David didn't move. He stood there, frozen, his eyes wide with horror as he took in the scene before him. I could see the confusion, the fear, the pain in his eyes as they darted between Samantha, the men, and me. "Mom, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice quivering. Tears began to stream down his face, and I felt my own eyes burn with unshed tears. Samantha's face flickered with panic before hardening again. "David, go back to your room," she repeated, but this time her voice carried a note of desperation. David shook his head, his small body trembling. "You said Dad was bad. You said he hurt you," he sobbed, his voice cracking. My heart shattered all over again. The lies she'd told him, the poison she'd been feeding our son. It was almost too much to bear. "David, it's not true," I called out, my voice raw with emotion. "Your mom, she's lying." David took a step back, clearly overwhelmed and horrified. His eyes were wide with disbelief, darting between Samantha and me. "Why, Mom? Why are you doing this?" he cried, his voice filled with pain and fear. Samantha's face twisted in frustration, her carefully crafted composure slipping away. "David, you don't understand," she yelled, her voice cracking. But it was too late. David turned and ran, his footsteps echoing down the hall. "David, wait," I shouted after him, my heart breaking for my son, who was now carrying a burden no child should ever have to bear. Samantha stepped in front of me, her face contorted with rage. "Look what you've done," she hissed at me, but I could see the fear in her eyes now. Her carefully laid plans were crumbling around her. "No, Samantha," I replied, my voice steady despite the terror and anger coursing through me. "You did this." I expected her to go after David, to try and damage control the situation. But to my horror and disgust, she didn't. Instead, she turned back to the men, her face a mask of determination. It was as if nothing had happened, as if our son hadn't just witnessed this nightmare. "Where were we?" she asked, her voice unnaturally calm. The men looked at each other, clearly unsure of how to proceed. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Our son, our little boy, had just run away terrified and confused, and she was acting like nothing had happened. The depth of her depravity hit me like a physical blow. "Samantha, what the hell are you doing?" I growled, pulling against my restraints. "Our son just saw. Go after him. He needs us." She turned to me, her eyes cold and distant. "He'll be fine. He's in his room. We'll deal with him later." I felt sick. This woman, I didn't recognize her anymore. How could she be so callous about our child's well-being? "You're insane," I spat out, my voice trembling with rage and disbelief. "He's our son, Samantha. He's traumatized. How can you just stand there and—" "Shut up," she snapped, her composure cracking again. "Just shut up, Jason. You don't get to judge me. You don't get to tell me how to handle this." I shook my head, feeling a mix of disgust and pity. "Handle this? There's no handling this, Samantha. You've destroyed everything. Our marriage, our family, our son's innocence. And for what? For this sick game?" She laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that sent chills down my spine. "Game? You think this is a game? This is my life, Jason. This is what I want, what I need, something you could never understand or provide." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw a stranger. The woman I had loved, the mother of my child, was gone. In her place stood someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of unimaginable cruelty. "What about David?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What about his needs, his safety, his happiness?" For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, regret perhaps. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that cold, detached look. "David will understand when he's older," she said dismissively. "He'll see that I did what I had to do to be happy." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The selfishness, the complete disregard for our child's well-being. It was beyond comprehension. "You're wrong," I said, my voice firm despite my fear and anger. "He'll never understand this, Samantha. You've scarred him for life. And for what? Your own selfish desires?" She turned away from me, back to the men who were still standing there awkwardly. "Enough talking," she said, her voice hard. "Let's continue." As she moved towards the men, I felt a surge of determination. I had to get out of here. I had to find David, to comfort him, to protect him from this madness. I began to struggle against my restraints with renewed vigor, ignoring the pain as the ropes cut into my skin. "Samantha," I called out, one last attempt to reach whatever humanity might be left in her. "Think about what you're doing. Think about David. It's not too late to stop this." But she didn't even turn around. It was as if I didn't exist anymore, as if our son's pain meant nothing to her. And in that moment, I knew that the woman I had loved was truly gone. As I watched her with these men, my mind raced. How could I get out of here? How could I reach David? What kind of damage had already been done to him? The thought of him alone, confused and terrified, tore at my heart. I had to be strong. For David. I had to find a way out of this nightmare. As Samantha and the men carried on as if nothing had happened, I silently vowed to my son that I would make this right. Somehow, some way, I would protect him and get us out of here. But for now, I was trapped, forced to witness this horror show while my son was somewhere in this godforsaken lodge, alone and scared. The helplessness threatened to overwhelm me, but I pushed it down. I had to stay alert, to look for any opportunity to escape. As I watched Samantha with growing revulsion, one thought kept repeating in my mind. How did we end up here? How did the woman I loved become this monster? And more importantly, how was I going to save our son from the damage she had inflicted? I stood there, my body still trembling from the shock of everything that had just happened. They were having fun, leak animals. I don't know how much time passed, but suddenly the sound of sirens grew louder, and I saw Samantha's face drain of color. No, No, this wasn't supposed to happen, she muttered, panic evident in her voice. The men who had been so confident just moments ago now looked at each other nervously. I heard one of them whisper, "The cops?" A surge of hope rushed through me. David must have found help somehow, my brave, smart boy. Relief flooded my system, though it did little to ease the dread and disgust still churning in my gut. Suddenly, the door burst open. Several police officers stormed in, guns drawn, shouting commands. The men immediately backed away, raising their hands. Samantha stood there, frozen in shock and fury. "You ruined everything!" she screamed at me, her face contorted with rage. The officers quickly moved in, restraining Samantha and the men. I felt the ropes around my wrists loosen as an officer cut me free. My arms fell limply to my sides, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. "David!" I cried out, my voice cracking with desperation. "David!" And then I saw him. My son came back into the room, a phone clutched tightly in his small hand. Without hesitation, I rushed forward and pulled him into my arms, holding him close. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I'm here. You're safe now." David clung to me, his little body shaking with sobs. I held him tighter, feeling a tidal wave of relief and heartbreak wash over me. "I'm so sorry, David," I murmured, guilt overwhelming me. "I'm so sorry you had to see any of that. You did great calling the cops." David looked up at me, his tear-stained face a mix of fear and relief. "I was so scared, Dad," he whimpered, "but I remembered what you taught me about emergencies." I kissed the top of his head, my own tears falling freely now. "You were so brave, son. So incredibly brave." An officer approached us, his expression sympathetic. "Sir, we'll need to take your statement, and we should have the boy checked out by the paramedics, just to be safe." I nodded, not letting go of David. "Of course. Can I stay with him?" "Absolutely," the officer assured me. "We'll do everything we can to make this as easy as possible for both of you." As we walked outside, I saw Samantha being led to a police car in handcuffs. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I saw a flicker of something. Regret? Anger? I couldn't tell. But I quickly looked away, focusing instead on David. The paramedics were gentle with him, checking him over while I sat nearby, holding his hand. David seemed calmer now, answering their questions in a quiet voice. "You're doing great, buddy," I told him, squeezing his hand. "I'm so proud of you." As the night wore on, we gave our statements to the police. I tried to shield David from the worst details, but I knew he had seen too much already. The weight of what had happened, of how our lives had changed in just a few short hours, settled heavily on my shoulders. But looking at David, seeing his strength and resilience, I knew we would get through this, together. It wouldn't be easy, but we had each other. And for now, that was enough. I held David close, my arms wrapped protectively around him, as we watched the police lead Samantha and those men out of the lodge. The click of handcuffs echoed in my ears, a surreal soundtrack to this nightmare. An officer approached us, his face a mask of professional calm. "Sir, we need you and your son to come with us to the station, for your safety, and to help us understand exactly what happened," he explained. I nodded, feeling like I'd aged a decade in the span of a few hours. "Of course," I managed to say, my voice hoarse. "Whatever you need." David looked up at me, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Dad, do we have to go?" "Yeah, buddy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The police need our help to sort this all out. But don't worry, I'm not leaving your side." As we walked towards the police car, I couldn't help but think about what lay ahead. The legal battles, the emotional fallout, the long road of healing for David. It all loomed like a mountain I wasn't sure I could climb. The car ride to the station was quiet. David clung to me, his small body trembling slightly. I stroked his hair, murmuring reassurances I wasn't sure I believed myself. At the station, they led us to a small room with a couch and some chairs. An officer, Jones, according to his badge, sat across from us. "Mr. Miller," he began, his tone gentle, "I know this is difficult, but can you walk me through what happened today?" I took a deep breath, glancing at David. "Is there somewhere my son can wait? I don't want him to hear this again." Officer Jones nodded. Of course, we have a child advocacy specialist who can sit with him in another room, if that's all right with you both. David's grip on my arm tightened. I don't want to leave you, Dad. I knelt down to his level. It's okay, buddy. I promise I'll be right here. The police just need to ask me some grown-up questions. How about you go with the nice lady and draw some pictures? I bet they have some cool crayons here. After a moment's hesitation, David nodded. A kind-faced woman came to escort him out, and I watched him go, feeling like a piece of my heart was walking away. Once the door closed, I turned back to Officer Jones. Where do I even start? I asked, my voice cracking. Just tell me what happened when you arrived at the lodge, he prompted. So I did. I recounted every painful detail. Samantha's strange behavior, the arrival of those men, the videos she showed me, the humiliation she seemed to revel in. With each word, the weight on my chest grew heavier. And then David walked in, I said, my hands clenching into fists at the memory. He saw things no child should ever see. His own mother. I couldn't finish the sentence. Officer Jones handed me a tissue, and I realized I'd started crying. Mr. Miller, he said gently, I know this is incredibly difficult, but I want you to know that you and your son are safe now. We're going to do everything we can to support you both through this process. I nodded, trying to pull myself together. What happens now? I asked. Well, we'll need to take formal statements from both you and David, he explained. There will be an investigation, and it's likely this will go to trial. But right now, our priority is making sure you and your son are safe and getting the support you need. As Officer Jones continued explaining the next steps, my mind wandered to David. How was I going to help him through this? How could I protect him from the trauma he'd just experienced? I sat in the dimly lit police station, my mind still reeling from the events of the past few days. Officer Jones leaned forward, his eyes full of concern. Mr. Miller, I know this is difficult, but we need to go over everything again. Can you tell me more about Samantha's behavior leading up to the incident? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. She'd been acting strange for weeks, always on her phone, secretive. I thought maybe she was just stressed from work, but I trailed off, the memories flooding back. And the videos she showed you at the lodge? My stomach churned. They were explicit, her with different men. She seemed proud of them, like she was gloating. Officer Jones nodded, jotting down notes. And David? You said he walked in on the scene? The image of my son's confused, terrified face flashed before my eyes. I clenched my fists, fighting back tears. Yeah, he saw things no kid should ever see. Samantha didn't even care. She just told him to go away. We'll make sure David gets all the support he needs, Officer Jones assured me. Child Services is already involved, and we've got some great child psychologists on standby. I nodded, grateful for his kindness. As I left the station, my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer, Sarah. Jason, I've got news. The prosecutor's filing charges against Samantha and those men. It's a long list. Child endangerment, emotional abuse, public indecency, conspiracy. They're not messing around. Good, I said, my voice hard. What's our next move? We need to file for divorce and push for full custody. With what happened, we've got a strong case. Can you come by the office tomorrow? The next day, I found myself in Sarah's office, surrounded by stacks of legal documents. She laid out our strategy, explaining how we'd use the evidence from the lodge incident to argue for full custody. Jason, I won't lie to you. This is going to be a tough battle. Divorce and custody cases are always messy, and with the criminal charges involved, it's going to be even more complicated. But given what Samantha did, we have a very strong case. I nodded, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger at Samantha for what she'd done, fear for David's well-being, and a fierce determination to protect him. What about David? I asked. How do we keep him safe through all this? Sarah's expression softened. We'll request a temporary restraining order to keep Samantha away from both of you, and we'll work with the child psychologists to make sure David's mental health is prioritized throughout the proceedings. Over the next few weeks, my life became a blur of meetings and paperwork. I met with child psychologists who explained the potential long-term effects of what David had witnessed. Their words terrified me, but they also gave me hope, outlining strategies to help him heal. Through it all, David clung to me like a lifeline. Nightmares plagued him, and he'd wake up crying, calling for me. I'd hold him close, whispering reassurances, promising him that he was safe, that I'd never let anyone hurt him again. One night, as I tucked him into bed, David looked up at me with those big brown eyes. "Dad, is Mom ever coming back?" My heart broke. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that his mother had betrayed us in the worst way possible? I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. "David, your mom, she made some very bad choices. Choices that hurt us both. Right now, it's not safe for her to be around us. I don't know if that will ever change." He nodded, his little face scrunched up in thought. "I'm scared, Dad. What if she tries to take me away?" I pulled him into a tight hug. "That's not going to happen, buddy, I promise. I'm going to do everything I can to keep you safe." As the custody hearing approached, my anxiety reached new heights. Sarah had prepared me as best she could, but nothing could fully ready me for facing Samantha in court. The day of the hearing arrived, and I found myself sitting in the courtroom, my palms sweaty as I gripped the edge of my seat. David sat beside me, looking small and vulnerable in his dress shirt and tie. Samantha entered with her lawyer, and for a moment our eyes met. I searched for any sign of remorse, any flicker of the woman I thought I'd married, but all I saw was cold defiance. The hearing began, and Sarah presented our case with fierce determination. She detailed the events at the lodge, backed up by police reports and psychologist evaluations. Samantha's lawyer tried to argue that she had acted out of emotional distress, but even he seemed to know it was a weak defense. As the judge called a recess to deliberate, I turned to David. "You okay, buddy?" He nodded, his face pale but determined. "I'm okay, Dad, as long as you're here." Those words gave me strength. No matter what happened, I knew we'd face it together. When the judge returned, the courtroom fell silent. My heart pounded as she began to speak. In light of the evidence presented, particularly the severe emotional and psychological harm inflicted upon the child, this court finds it in the best interest of David Miller to award full custody to his father, Jason Miller. I exhaled sharply, tears of relief stinging my eyes. I squeezed David's hand, and he looked up at me with a small, hopeful smile. The judge continued. Visitation rights for the mother, Samantha Miller, are suspended indefinitely pending further evaluation and completion of court-mandated therapy. As we left the courtroom, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time since that horrible day at the lodge, I felt hope. David and I would heal together. It had been months since that horrific night at the lodge, but the memories still haunted me. David's small hand was clutched tightly in mine, his presence both a comfort and a reminder of why we were here. We stood in the courtroom, my heart pounding as the judge prepared to deliver the sentence. The judge's voice cut through the tense silence. "Samantha Miller, you have been found guilty on all charges." I felt a surge of emotions, relief, anger, sadness. Samantha, the woman I once loved, the mother of my child, sat there stone-faced as her fate was sealed. "For your heinous actions and the severe psychological damage inflicted upon your child, I sentence you to 10 years in prison," the judge continued. I heard David's sharp intake of breath beside me. I squeezed his hand gently, trying to offer whatever comfort I could. The judge wasn't finished. "Additionally, you will be required to undergo extensive psychological evaluation and treatment as a condition for any potential parole." I couldn't help but think it was too little, too late. The damage had already been done. Then came the sentences for the men involved. "Each of you will serve between 5 to 8 years, depending on your level of involvement and prior criminal records." The judge's words echoed in the courtroom. "I want to emphasize the gravity of your actions. The emotional harm inflicted on a child who witnessed such acts is immeasurable." As I listened, a grim satisfaction settled over me. Justice was being served. Those responsible for tearing our lives apart would face the consequences of their actions. It wouldn't undo the trauma, but it was something. I looked down at David, his young face a mix of confusion and relief. We had a long road ahead of us, but at least this chapter was closing. The people who hurt us would be behind bars, and we could focus on healing. As the courtroom began to clear, I knelt down to David's level. "It's over, buddy. They can't hurt us anymore." He nodded, his eyes welling up with tears. I pulled him into a tight hug, feeling his small body shake with silent sobs. We stayed like that for a long moment, father and son, survivors of a nightmare we never asked for. It had been a year since that horrific day at the lodge, and while the memories still lingered, they no longer held the same power over us. David and I had come a long way. Watching David play in the yard with his new friend Ethan, I couldn't help but smile. The sound of their laughter filled the air, a stark contrast to the quiet, withdrawn boy he'd been just months ago. Our weekly therapy sessions had been tough, but they were paying off. David was slowly becoming himself again. "I never thought I'd get to a place like this again," I admitted to Claire, who sat beside me. She squeezed my hand gently. "Neither did I, but here we are," she replied softly. Claire had been an unexpected bright spot in our lives. We'd met through a support group for single parents, and her kindness and understanding had drawn me in. She'd been through her own struggles and understood the delicate balance of healing and moving forward. David came running up to us, his face flushed with excitement. "Look, Dad, Ethan and I built a fort." I felt my heart swell with pride and love. "That's amazing, buddy," I said, wrapping an arm around Claire. "I'm so proud of you." As I watched the boys play, I thought about how far we'd come. The nightmares that used to plague David had become less frequent. He was more open, more willing to talk about his feelings. His therapist often remarked on his resilience, calling him a brave little boy who had faced something incredibly hard and was coming out stronger. I'd been working on myself too. The guilt I carried for what David had endured had been overwhelming at first. But through therapy, I'd learned to forgive myself, to understand that I'd done everything I could to protect him. Now, my focus was on rebuilding our lives and finding moments of joy. Our new routine had brought a sense of normalcy back into our lives. I'd returned to work, and David was doing well in school. We spent our evenings together, sometimes just the two of us, other times with Claire and Ethan. It felt good to have a support system, to know we weren't alone in this journey. I wake up to the sound of birds chirping outside our window, the soft morning light filtering through the curtains. For a moment, I just lie there, taking in the warmth of Claire beside me and the peaceful quiet of the house. It's hard to believe that 3 years have passed since those dark days that turned our lives upside down. I turn my head to look at Claire, still sleeping peacefully. Her presence in our lives has been nothing short of miraculous. I remember the day we met, at one of David's therapy sessions. She was there with her son, Ethan, and something just clicked between us. It wasn't love at first sight or anything like that. We were both too broken for that. But there was a connection, an understanding that grew over time. I hear the patter of little feet in the hallway and can't help but smile. The door creaks open, and David pokes his head in, his hair sticking up in all directions. "Dad, are you awake?" he whispers. "Yeah, buddy, come on in," I reply softly, careful not to wake Claire. David climbs onto the bed, snuggling up next to me. At 11 years old, he's growing up so fast, but moments like these remind me that he's still my little boy. "Is it really happening today?" he asks, his eyes wide with excitement. I nod, feeling a mix of joy and nerves. "Yep, it's wedding day." David grins, then looks over at Claire. "Should we wake her up?" Before I can answer, Claire stirs, her eyes fluttering open. She takes in the sight of us and smiles. "Good morning, my boys." Just then, Ethan appears in the doorway, rubbing his eyes sleepily. "Is it time to get up?" Claire laughs softly. "Looks like the whole gang's here. Come on, Ethan, join the party." Ethan doesn't need to be told twice. He scrambles onto the bed, wedging himself between David and Claire. For a few minutes, we just lie there, a tangle of limbs and sleepy smiles. As I look at the faces of my soon-to-be wife and our boys, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude. We've all been through so much, but here we are, on the brink of a new chapter. The rest of the morning is a whirlwind of activity. There are suits to be put on, hair to be combed, and last-minute details to be sorted. David and Ethan are both buzzing with excitement, racing around the house in their matching suits. Before I know it, we're standing in the garden, surrounded by our closest friends and family. The flowers are in full bloom, their colors vibrant against the lush green of the grass. I take a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. David tugs at my sleeve. "Dad, you okay?" I look down at him, my heart swelling with pride. He's come so far from that scared little boy who witnessed things no child should ever see. "I'm great, buddy. Just a little nervous." He grins up at me. "Don't worry, Dad. Claire loves you, and so do we." I pull him into a hug, blinking back tears. "I love you too, David. So much." The soft strains of music start to play, and everyone turns to look down the aisle, and there she is. Claire. She's walking towards me, a vision in white, her eyes locked on mine. In that moment, everything else fades away. It's just her and me. As she reaches me, I take her hand, feeling its warmth and strength. The officiant begins to speak, but I'm barely listening. I'm lost in Claire's eyes, in the love I see reflected there. We exchange our vows, promises of love, support, and understanding. When it's time for the rings, David and Ethan step forward, each holding a small velvet box. The pride on their faces as they hand us the rings is enough to bring tears to my eyes. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant says. "You may kiss the bride." I pull Claire close, our lips meeting in a kiss that feels like coming home. The garden erupts in cheers and applause, with David and Ethan's whoops of joy rising above it all. As we turn to face our guests, hand in hand, I catch David's eye. He's beaming, his face alight with happiness. In that moment, I know that we've done it. We've come through the darkness and found our way to the light. The reception is a blur of laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. I watch as David and Ethan run around with the other kids, their joy infectious. Claire squeezes my hand, and I turn to look at her. "We did it," she says softly. I nod, feeling a lump in my throat. "We did. Thank you for everything." She leans in to kiss me, and I'm struck again by how lucky I am, how lucky we all are. As the night winds down, I find myself sitting with David and Ethan. They're both tired, but still buzzing with excitement. "So, what do you think?" I ask them. "Good day?" David nods enthusiastically. "The best, Dad. I'm really happy for you and Claire." Ethan chimes in. "Yeah, it was awesome. And now we're officially brothers." I ruffle their hair, feeling a surge of love for these two boys who have been through so much. That's right. We're a family now, all of us. As I look around at the remnants of our celebration, at Claire chatting with some of our guests, at David and Ethan leaning against each other, half asleep, I'm filled with a sense of peace. We've created something beautiful here, something worth fighting for every day. The past has shaped us. There's no denying that. But it doesn't define us anymore. We're moving forward, together, stronger than ever, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for our little family. 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 Holds for our little